Hi, my name's Robert McLeman. I'm an Associate Professor of Geography at Wilfrid Laurier University, and this short video is for students in ES101 and is to introduce them to the fifth of their labs in this course, in which we talk about oil pipelines. Now, I'm standing here, as you can see, at one of the busier intersections in Waterloo. There's buses and vehicles going by me. There's a gas station in the background. And one of the questions you may ask yourself is, where does that gasoline come from? You might think that it originates from Canadian oil. After all, we're one of the larger producers and exporters of oil and natural gas in the world. But the reality is that the infrastructure here in North America is such that the gas in these tanks probably came from oil that was imported from overseas, brought in tankers to a terminal port on the east coast of North America, transported by pipeline inland to a refinery at a place like Montreal or Sarnia or Nanticoke on the coast of Lake Erie, and then distributed to the gas stations around southern Ontario. And you may ask yourself, well, what's going on here? Well, the reality is that we export a lot of oil and natural gas, especially in terms of oil, increasingly from the tar sands out in Alberta. That tends to go south to the United States. Now, there's a number of proposals to build new pipelines or to renovate existing pipelines here in North America to link Alberta, Canada's sort of oil and energy hub, to eastern North America, to the Arctic, to the Pacific coast, and additional pipelines to the United States. And these pipelines are surrounded by quite a bit of controversy. And part of it has to do with the nature of the tar sands themselves. Just as when you squeeze a cow's udder, it isn't cheese that comes out of it, it's milk, and it takes several steps to process that milk into cheese. What comes out of the ground in northern Alberta is not oil, even though the oil companies and the governments like to say that it's oil. It's tar. It's a thick, tar-like substance that's mixed with sand and dirt, and it takes a lot of steps to get that from that stage into a gas tank. You have to steam it with very hot water to separate the sand and dirt from the tar, and then you have to mix something called condensate into it to make that tar flow down a pipeline. Now, these condensates are derived from liquid natural gas, and they often contain toxins like hydrogen sulfide or benzene, other things that you don't want to come into contact with. And so the mixture of tar and condensate is known as bitumen, and that bitumen is what would be piped down pipelines to the Pacific coast, to eastern Canada, and to the United States. And in your lab, you're going to talk about one particular pipeline project that's very controversial. It's called the Northern Gateway, and it would link the tar sands to the port of Kitimat on the west coast of British Columbia. Now, Kitimat is a deep water port. There's a large aluminum smelter already there, and ocean-going oil tankers could use that port to deliver tar sands product to India, to China, and other Asian destinations. But it wouldn't be the first pipeline to go to the Pacific coast from Alberta, but it would be the first to carry this bitumen mixture of condensate and tar sands product. And a lot of controversy has erupted over this because the pipeline would cross the Rocky Mountains, right across all the western mountain ranges until it reaches Kitimat. And this area contains a lot of undisturbed wilderness, or fairly undisturbed wilderness, across any number of rivers and streams. They'll go through very rugged terrain, Pacific coast rainforests, and there's a coalition of First Nations groups, residents of British Columbia, and environmental groups that simply do not want to see this pipeline get built. On the other hand, you have the government of Alberta, the Canadian government, and of course the oil companies who very much would like to see it built. And you've even seen some pretty nasty disputes in 2012 between the premiers of British Columbia and Alberta over who benefits and who would suffer any consequences if there was a problem with the pipeline. Now, one of the things you have to remember is that pipelines inevitably will spring a leak somewhere. It's just the nature of the game. It inevitably happens. And unfortunately, pipeline companies here in North America have a reputation, pretty well founded, for being pretty slow to respond to leaks and to be pretty weak in their efforts at cleaning them up after they happen. There's the other concern about the ocean-going vessels that would come and go to take the tar sands product to Asian markets. Again, wherever you have oil terminals, you inevitably have oil spilt into the water, sometimes in small quantities, sometimes in larger quantities. And the coastline along that part of British Columbia is a very beautiful one. Lots of beautiful native species like orcas, killer whales, seals, salmon. And so a lot of people really would fear what might happen when oil gets spilled into the waters around Kitimat. So that's what you're going to do in your class, in your lab section this week. You're going to investigate the pros and cons economically and ecologically of the pipeline proposal for the Northern Gateway. Your lab instructor will sort of act as a judge in a sort of role-play scenario, and then you'll have an individual assignment in which you'll be asked to do a little bit of reading about the Northern Gateway, both material from supporters of the project and material from opponents, and then you're going to decide what you think ought to be done in this situation. So thanks very much for joining me, and I'll see you in class.